In this training video, we're going to look at the modeling wizard briefly for the triangle group that we modeled in the last session, that is CTP. So if you don't have it open already, please open the workbook 104A database and open the triangle group CTP. We're then going to open PTF. So just click on the PTF tab at the top here and then minimize the regression tables. Right, as you remember, we're fitting the SGI model by default, and that fits a single parameter in each direction, one gamma or development parameter, one alpha or accident parameter, and one calendar parameter. Now we're going to look at the modeling wizard. So first of all, we're going to check the modeling wizard preferences, which is the psi with a P. If you put your mouse over it, it says wizard preferences, and we're just going to make sure the right wizard is loaded. And you can see that the current wizard that I have selected is multiple models, no constraints 104, and this should be the same as the wizard that you have selected by default. If not, just click on load and it will open a directory where you can select different wizards, and you just browse to where that multiple models constraints 104 is. Actually, I did want multiple models constraints. Sorry, good thing I checked. Okay, and a wizard is just a list of commands, as you can see here, and what it does is goes through different ways of different tests on the data. For example, the first step it does is check for any outliers, add some parameters, and so forth until it ends up with the final model at the end of the script. Okay. So what we're going to do now is just step through the wizard for a couple of steps. So that this is what the button next to the wizard preferences is the psi with a yellow arrow going across. And if you put your mouse over it, it says one wizard step. If you click that, you'll see it's got an added a parameter between 1 and 2. If you click it again, added 2 to 3. It's added a calendar parameter, and so forth. And normally what you do is you would enter PTF and you'd actually just click on this run wizard button, which would run that whole script and save some models. So let's do that now. You'll come up with the message that it's completed modeling the data. Press OK. And if you look at this model, and it's called M6, it's exactly the same model that we had for our good model. The wizard will go and produce 3 models, and sometimes some of them are the same. So if we click load model, let's load, and it's produced M1, M4, and M6. Let's load M1, load M4, and then load good. If we look in the logbook, you can see the summary statistics. We had M6, and the last 5 entries, which are good, M4, M1, and M6, have all got the same statistics, so they are actually the same model. In a later study, we'll examine where different conditions are met, so that you get, for example, M1, which is always the first model created, then M2, and then M6, or maybe M2 and then M5. But either way, you end up with 3 models, and if you ever get an M4 and an M6, M4 and M6 are always the same. Usually M4 is better than M1, because M4 is created after doing more testing on M1, so usually it's the case that M4 is better. Alright, we'll close the logbook now. So what you can see is that the wizard, just by running those set of scripts, went and produced the same model in a fraction of the time that it took us to create it manually. And what we'll find out later is that after you've run the wizard on your data, you'll then want to run further tests to make sure that the data that the model the wizard has identified is in fact the most optimal model and suitable for your data. But let's now look at a revision of the buttons that we've covered to date. We've got the model template as the first button on the PTF toolbar. If you click on that, you've got a number of options of starting models or diagnostic models that you can begin from. The default that you begin with is a single gamma model with inflation, SGI. some of the diagnostic models, chain ladder, separation method, and accident payment or accident calendar method. These models aren't models that you'd use for actual forecasting from, but they are diagnostic models that will tell you something about the data, and they'll be covered in more detail in the subsequent study. The next button on the toolbar is the Load Model button. We've covered that. Model parameters, which we'll look at in a later video. Constraints, again, we're going to look at that in more detail in a later video. Wizard preferences, one wizard step, running the wizard. The optimize one step, optimize every sequentially until all optimization is complete, so automatic optimize. Estimate the model, the regression table, which will show you your regression estimates if you click on that. Incidentally, don't click the close button here unless you want to close this PTF model. If you click there, it will actually close everything relating to that regression table, so by default we just minimize it. Save model, which we've covered. The residuals display, which will bring up this window if you have it minimized or closed. Model display, this window unless you have, when you have it minimized or closed. The next button is the 3D model display. On the drop down you've also got the option of the residual plots. You've got the resultant trends, so what the trends are when you actually look at them over the triangle, projected on the triangle. Diagnostic tools, so you've got the normality tests, you've got outliers listing if any, and so forth. You've got your validation button, so you've got automatic validation, single validation analysis, and then display the auto validation window if you run it. So for example, that becomes active after I activate the validation. Logbook, forecast. So we're going to cover the forecast dialog in more detail in a later video, but once you've run that, you've then got access to the forecast table. On the drop down, if you've run future accident period forecasts or combined forecast tables, you can open those. You've got the forecast summary, which is additional summary information about the forecast. You've got accident calendar year breakdown, observed versus mean estimate, and so forth. Percentage differences, comparisons, summary graphs, and forecast settings with the parameters that you used in the forecast. And again, on the drop down you've got your future accident forecast summary and combined forecast summary. Once you've done that, you've got the option for PALD, which is you run simulations on from these cells that you're projecting to get an idea of what this distribution actually looks like, because this is an actual distribution that you can get without simulating, because all these log normals that are correlated, so you need to simulate from them to determine what this distribution actually looks like. The PALD module allows you to do that. And again, I'm just going to put the default parameters in, and you get some more summary tables out of that. Once you've done this analysis, if you're looking at by calendar year in your forecast, in your PALD settings, you can then run reinsurance programs analysis by calendar year. So there's a lot of information here, and particularly these subsequent from the forecast are going to be covered in much more detail in later videos, because there's a lot of information that you can get out of there. By contrast, if we decide we want to model the cumulative data in ELRF, let's close PTF now. So click on the X button at the right here to close the module. Right-click on triangle group CTP. It should bring up this window. If we click on the cumulative dataset, open ELRF. If we go to the YX plots, well, for a start, we can see that we don't have any predictive power in our ratios, and we definitely need an intercept. If I just go back to the previous one. If we put an intercept in, so let's go to model templates. Again, this M stands for model templates. Turned in ratio. So we're going to select everything, but then we're going to optimize it to get the most optimal model. We'll do that by clicking twice. If we look at the regression table, we can see that all our ratio -1s have gone to 0, so that intercept was the most useful parameter in the model, and we've also got a trend in that first development period. So by comparison, and then also if we look at the residuals, we can see that we're underfitting a bit, so our forecast is actually going to be too low. If I do the forecast now, we get only 12.6 million, so it's slightly under. So by comparison with PTF, if we then go back to PTF, right-click on the triangle group tab, CGP, dataset, good model. If you compare that information that you're getting out of here with, and I'll just close this one, minimize that. Clear that model display with the regression table out of ELRF, and there's a lot more information that you're getting out of PTF and a lot more information that you'll subsequently get when you start doing further analysis like using PALD or your reinsurance portfolio. So I hope that has whetted your appetite a bit for what else we can do in PTF, and I look forward to meeting you in later videos. Thank you.